This world is filled with subjects and events that people don't necessarily feel comfortable talking about. As a personal goal and mission of mine, I am here to help those around me see that talking about uncomfortable or hard topics is not always a bad thing, and that there are times when talking about hard subjects can be vital for helping people come out of a situation they are in and for the healing process. Today, I will be speaking about the importance of understanding pornography and how it relates to each one of us. An important place to start with such a careful subject is defining what pornography is. Pornography comes from the Greek word pornographia, which literally translates into writings about prostitutes. What we need to understand is how pornography can become an addiction, how it is essentially a drug, how it changes the brain, and how it affects you. I want to preface the speech by saying that I am not here to damn any one of those of you who may be involved with this topic, and I certainly do not want you to have the notion that I think any less of you because of what you may be going through. That is not the case, and certainly not the purpose of this speech. I have been working on this for the past few weeks to gain resourceful and accurate information to share with you. With that being said, let's get into how pornography can become addictive for your brain. There may be some people in this room that don't entirely believe that an addiction to pornography can be a real thing. To put this into perspective, Dr. Nora Volkow, director of the United States National Institute on Drug Abuse, is convinced that pornography addiction is real. She even suggested changing NIDA's name in order to recognize, quote, addictions such as pornography, gambling, and food, end quote. Of all the studies done, research shows that of all the forms of online entertainment, such as gambling, gaming, surfing, and social networking, porn has the highest tendency to become addictive. To understand why this is, we must look at two key chemicals in the brain that are released when viewing pornography. The first being dopamine, which is the reward drug for your brain when you do something that feels good. The second chemical that is being produced in your brain is called delta phosphate. This chemical's job is to build new nerve pathways to mentally connect what you are doing to the pleasure that you feel. When you view pornography, both dopamine and delta phosphate is pumping out of your brain at rapid amounts. As you can imagine, the more you view pornography, the more pathways are being built and furbished. As porn users become desensitized from repeated overloads of dopamine, they eventually feel like they cannot experience normal behaviors or emotions without a dopamine high. As the habit is increased, the choice of porn turns increasingly hardcore. Many who try to break their porn habits report it extremely hard to stop. Dr. Shaun of Biola University states, quote, another issue of desensitization is when the pornography turns human beings into objects. See, what pornography does is it takes a human being and objectifies that human being. Sex was designed to be in the context of a committed, loving relationship where there is trust, intimacy, and physical touch. What pornography does is it takes a human being and reduces them just to their physical parts that someone can look at for their own pleasure. In other words, it objectifies them. When we look at porn, we are literally teaching ourselves to view people as objects, end quote. It's a little heavy, isn't it? Unfortunately, it's not about to get lighter. Let's bounce off of this and move on to how pornography is essentially a drug for the brain. As mentioned before, deep in your brain, you have a reward center. This center's job is to release pleasure chemicals into your brain when you do something healthy, like eating tasty food, doing a hard workout, or enjoying a kiss. The high that you receive from this chemical rush makes you want to repeat that behavior. However, the only issue with this is that the brain can be tricked. Addictive substances such as tobacco cause a similar release of chemicals as pornography. As mentioned before, dopamine is the reward chemical when you do something right or when you do something that feels good. When these chemicals are released during the viewing of pornography, they give false signals and is overpowering your brain, intoxifying it with it, allowing it to think that what you are doing is right, despite the brain attempting to ward off these chemicals being released in this situation. Essentially, your brain cannot tell the difference between drugs and a healthy reward because addictive drugs continue hijacking the brain. Now, there may be some of you here today thinking pornography is just a fantasy, simply something in your head with no real grip on reality. This does not affect me. You'd be right. It is essentially all in the head. We are next going to cover how pornography can change and mold your brain. The brain is a hungry organ. It consumes 20% of your oxygen's brain, so resources are fairly scarce in your head. The competition between brain pathways are high, and those that don't get used are easily replaced. Only the strong survive, so use it or lose it. Studies show that frequent users of pornography have brains that are less connected, less active, and even smaller in some areas. Dr. McElhaney from the Medical Institute of Sexual Health stated, quote, "A fundamental fact about the brain is that before birth until death, the brain is moldable and adaptable. Though the brain is fully developed in the 20s and 30s, the brain is still moldable and shapeable throughout your life and can continue to adapt based on our experiences, our beliefs, and our behaviors." This is where porn comes in. Pornography happens to be a way for your brain to form new, long-lasting pathways. Dr. Norman Doidge, a researcher at Columbia University, explains that pornography is such a ferocious competitor that hardly any other activity can compete with it, including sex with an actual partner. You heard me right. Pornography can actually overpower the brain's natural ability to have sex. She explains further, quote, "Porn creates the perfect conditions and triggers the release of the right chemicals to make lasting changes in the brain. This essentially gives your brain the notion that porn is better than the real thing, especially when your brain is in a flow state, which is essentially where you are so deep into what you're doing that nothing else seems to matter," end quote. To conclude this talk, I want to recap what has been said. The three main points discussed were how pornography can become addictive, how pornography affects the brain like a drug, and how pornography changes the brain. This is not a men's issue. This is not a women's issue. This is not an issue that does not affect you. This is a world issue. Whether you were aware of it or not, this is affecting your brain with what you are seeing on advertisements on the television and the media that you view. This is also affecting those around you, your brother, your sister, your best friend, or roommate. If you are being affected by this or know somebody that is, please do not be afraid to reach out to somebody and get help. If you think you are not affected by this, just know that as you walk down the street, you are never aware of the people undressing you in their minds. Thank you.